Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever, wherever that you may be tuning in. This is Yonks, and this is now our second tools working group that we've been hosting here, and very excited to start unpacking Hats protocol. And I would really say it's probably the leader for roles-based coordination, and it's being positioned as the organizational graph protocol. And very excited to be joined with me today with David Elrichman, the co-founder of Hats Protocol, and then we also have some good representation from the Unlock community. And one of the ways that I love doing things like this is having fun. And for everybody that's participating, this image right here, you'll actually be getting airdropped the NFT done via the Unlock Protocol certification. But anyway, would you like to do a real quick intro for us, David?
Sure, everybody. Awesome to be here. One of the co-founders of Hats Protocol, along with Spencer Graham and Nick, and on behalf of Hatsprotocol Labs, which is a core contributor at Hats Protocol. Been doing various forms of decentralized organizing for the last 12 years. First, it was a lot of IRL, kind of multi-organizational work, and then with Hats, more about how we can scale to coordinate in more and better ways in digital spaces. So glad to be here.
Fabulous. And I'm going to kick it over to Stella for a real quick introduction. Then you can introduce Chris, and then we'll hop into the agenda.
Oh, that's a surprise. All right. Hi, my name is Stella. I'm the founder of the Alana project and the lead steward currently at Unlock Protocol DAO. And yeah, we're looking into how we can utilize Hats protocol to visualize the structure of our DAO.
And do you want to say anything for us Friday afternoon here, Chris?
Sure, just glad to be here with Chris Carthy, COO at Unlock Labs, and looking forward to just learning a ton more about Hats today. So thanks for setting us up.
All right, great. And hopping into the agenda here, let me make this a little bit bigger for everybody on the live stream. So checking off some boxes here, did our introductions. So one of the things I would like to hop in, and this is one of the things that I got to give some kudos to the Hats protocol team. So like if you go to their main page here, again, organizational graph protocol, and they've got some great case studies over here on their page with very well-established organizations within the ecosystem at large. But my favorite one, and this is one that I got to give kudos again to the Hats team, is the Hats Proto DAO. And taking a look over here, and did you want to walk us through this tree over here at all, David?
I can just give a super brief overview. So if you scroll to the left even further, so it's a proto DAO because it's not a true DAO currently. It is it being incubated by Hatsprotocol Labs, but we have the proto DAO branch here, and we are progressively decentralizing. And so you can see we kind of have different contribution zones. We actually just put out a blog post about this on Wednesday, 2 days ago, blog.hatsprotocol.xyz about the proto DAO. And our community member hat, that gets people access into the Telegram group and into the Charmverse workspace and into some voting power and joke race and other things. And then as people contribute, make open source contributions, build with Hats, integrate with Hats, and so forth, they and their organizations can receive proto rep, which are on-chain reputation points, tracked with the Moloch v3 DAO House system that we use. And those proto rep points can be then converted into proto votes or governance power in Hats proto DAO as people become a steward. So the steward hat gives you the power to convert your reputation points into actual governance power. And we have 38 stewards, builders, wearers, users, we call them wearers, and contributors from organizations across the space, and they're helping us progressively decentralize and to advance the Hats ecosystem. On the right side, you can see specific roles. Actually, to the left a little bit further, I was saying on the right side of the proto DAO branch under Hats proto DAO role admin. Those are specific roles in the proto DAO, and we're kicking off a process this season where stewards can permissionlessly stake 100 protovotes to claim the role curator hat. Though that could then be slashed if they don't fulfill the responsibilities of that hat, but that gives them the power to create their own role in the DAO and get compensated for that role. So over the coming weeks, you're going to see lots of other hats being created and deployed underneath that role curator hat, which are the kind of unique roles that stewards are playing. On the right side is the rest of the Haberdasher Labs tree. I won't go into detail here, but that's that just is a look at how we're organizing ourselves as builders of the protocol and the products associated with it. And actually, a core member of our team, Scottrepreneur, has jumped in the call now here too. So happy to have Scott here. Is key on so many fronts, our front end lead and developer lead in lots of different ways. So thanks for joining, Scott.
Yeah, and I don't know if Scott gets credit for the visualization here, but it looks absolutely fabulous. And I know that organizations can spend a lot of time and effort and not have the composability that it appears that you can get here with Hats protocol. So looking at some of the other case studies, I've got Rare DAO over here, and they don't have some of the fancy imagery that the Proto DAO with Hats does, but I think that this is kind of another great example and another one. And I think I opened up tabs on all of them except for MakerDAO. And this is a very simple one, and this is probably more what going to implement on the second half here for DUNADAO, where we've got a pretty simple as a fledgling DAO that we're still incubating within our DAO ecosystem. And then also have to highlight Raid Guild here, that's really gotten into like the characters of as far as some difference. And I know that Stellar is a gamer, so she'll probably appreciate some of the gaming themes of like wizards, warriors, monks, paladins. And I'm not going to talk about all of those, but I think that that's a fun one. So you might take a look, Stella, as far as having some fun ways that we can potentially do that within Unlock protocol. So I think if I had to summarize, like looking at some of the case studies, I would probably say the Haberdasher with the Unlock protocol, and this is something that we mentioned before we went live, is probably most similar with Unlock Labs being, and that's a very common model within the Web3 ecosystem. And then the DAO is we're working to decentralize. But did anybody want to chime in on some case studies before we hop on to the next item on the agenda?
I have a question.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so in the examples you showed, what I've seen is it's like either organized by departments or just by roles, or like working groups, I guess. Like, no, by departments or by like roles. Yeah, by roles. So I was wondering, is there like a reason why you would want to choose one over the other, or is there like no set of rules and people just do it whatever way feels more intuitive, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are two different approaches. One is more like the schemorphic, like building your hats tree as a org chart, basically, a hierarchical org chart, where it's like, but the difference is instead of an individual CEO at the top, it's the collective, usually, in the case of a DAO, with working groups and then individuals who are part of those working groups, and that can make a lot of sense. That's kind of how the admin relationships also flow in a hats tree. But then other groups just focus on really specific roles, as you said, and it's really just about getting into the missions that we need to delegate to specific individuals or groups, and it doesn't matter as much in like what structure they're a part of. It's just about a way to delegate those specific permissions, and that was Yonk shared a graphic before of the current set of permissions and powers that can be connected to and accessed by a hat. And so we usually do recommend that people, there it is. So any of these things can be connected to a hat, and someone could then access via the hat. The hat provides the token, and via token gates or integrations, they can access these powers, resources or governance power, communication platforms, casting authority on broadcaster and whatnot. And so we do recommend that people, that organizations, start simple. You don't need to necessarily get your whole structure, at once or figure it out perfectly. That can be pretty overwhelming if you're thinking about, what is the perfect structure for this DAO over the long term. Instead, start with where are there really specific roles and permissions that it would be helpful to compile into a hat, or to be able to have the ability to delegate and revoke those powers, or to attach them to specific eligibility criteria. And now, and you create that, and then know that your hat's tree can always grow and expand and change over time. We've built it so that it can kind of grow and evolve with the organization.
And I saw Dr. Lau. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, just to give you an example, we work closely with Raid Guild. And, from Nextdoor point of view, there's like 2 or 3 ways of using hats. One is sort of a static tree, which is around business processes. So we have a cost committee, we'd have a grants committee, we'd have a organizing committee. So those are sort of like roles are sort of semi-permanent, and they are tapped into sort of fixed resources. On the other hand, we also have sort of what we call classes, and these are akin to Raid Guild. Let's say a fighter is a full stack developer, a rogue is a lawyer or compliance, a wizard is someone who does Celerity coding. And what that does is it allows ad hoc working to assemble very quickly. So the client comes to them, they say they want to do X, Y, Z. Then someone say, okay, we need 2 fighters, a rogue, and 1.5 mages, and then they sort of issue the call. So the hat is not really a static role like keys, but sort of a quick and easy way to identify the skills and capabilities of people so they can be rapidly assembled for ad hoc work, in which case this is like doing client development work.
All right, thanks for the input there. And did anybody else want to chime in on the case studies? Don't see anybody else opening up their mic, so let me get back to our agenda here. All right, so discussing let me actually, before we go to that one, besides what we already showed here, and let me go back to that image real quick. So favorite use cases, what are your favorite use cases for, and we've got a special time to talk about Farcaster since we're all increasingly fans of Farcaster, but what are your favorite use cases, David, of hats?
I was muted. So this has been an interesting thing. We built the protocol so it was very unopinionated, intentionally so. And then over the last year, 2 years, a year and a half, I guess, since we deployed V1 of the protocol, been seeing lots of different ways that people have used it to solve their problems. And now, over time, have started to realize some really common specific patterns that DAOs and organizations tend to use the protocol for. So some of the ones that come to mind are hats for councils. So giving a group of people a specific set of permissions that come with being on a council, whether that's a DAO council or an operations council or a grants council. And often that means associating those roles, those hats, with signing authority on a multi-sig. And then a lot of times those councils are elected positions. And so via any kind of election, whether it's through Snapshot or Joke Race or Tally or DAO House, wherever you do your elections, you can say, set the eligibility criteria for a hat, the DAO council hat, say that only the top vote getters in this election are eligible to wear this hat. and receive the multi-sig signing authority permissions that come with that. And that hat automatically expires after the given term, or it can be associated with, you have to be the top vote getter of an election and stay above a certain reputation threshold, or have staked a certain number of tokens, or hold an NFT in your wallet. And the moment you become ineligible for any of those properties, your hat's revoked and you instantly lose the signing authority on the multi-sig. So DAOs for councils is a big one. DAOs for, hats for councils, hats for elections, which I mentioned, just a common way to get people into a specific role and then toggle off after a given time period. Seeing more and more use cases around hats for grants committees and grants programs. So not only the powers associated with the grants committee who's making decisions, spending resources, their ability to post to Farcaster on behalf of the DAO about the grants committee, but also for grantees too, a way to track and hold grantees accountable. And you can, Raid Guild has been doing this to super fluid stream funds to the wearers of a given hat. And so that's a way that you could pay your grantees or send the resources to the grantees as long as they are fulfilling whatever criteria is necessary of the grantees. You could also say that you have to sign an on-chain agreement in order to claim or to receive the grantee hat, for example. And so that might even be a legal commitment or a commitment associated with the responsibilities of being a grantee. I put in the chat our link to join the hats community, and what's necessary there is to sign our code of conduct and community agreements in order to claim the community member hat, which then gives you the powers associated with that. A couple others I'll just roll through quickly. Role-based compensation, as I shared with Raid Guild. Kind of another one is like leveling up in a community. So ATX DAO has built a roles and reputation system using hats, where you can use the eligibility criteria around you have to have a certain number of tokens or a certain number of reputation points in a community, and as you accrue more and more of those reputation points, it makes you eligible for a hat that gives you a higher rank. Basically, you're leveling up and gives you more and more powers. Maybe you go from read access to comment access to write access, or things like that. So kind of like as people get more and more involved and go from the periphery into the core of a DAO, they level up and get more and more powers associated with that, and also get recognized for sort of the rank that they're holding. And then, as you mentioned, Farcaster account sharing and decentralized channel moderation. And Scott, if you're here, I'll let you talk more about those. And I think, Yonks, you said you wanted to spend some other time on the call digging into that. Scott's been working on that quite a lot.
Yeah, no, if Scott wants to chime in, that would be fabulous.
For the Farcaster channel moderation?
Yeah, maybe give just a quick overview of what kind of stuff we're doing with Farcaster, both channels and also account sharing.
Cool. Yeah, so the team's been working on implementing shared account access. So we've been working closely with HeroCast to enable that on the client side. And so we've been transitioning that so that you don't have to even leave your client. You can install it via the Warpcast actions and interact directly with casts through your other accounts. So it gives you a nice little interface to jump into the brand account or the other intern account. So yeah, really excited to be able to plug that in. And as they push channel IDs on chain, you'll be able to manage channel IDs in a similar fashion. So excited to be able to give powers to manage these shared accounts directly back to users and the community. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think that's a good overview for now.
Yeah, does anybody want to ask any questions about the Farcaster stuff before we move on down the agenda? And I know that Chris has a hard stop here on the half an hour. Did you want to throw in anything real quick, Chris, before you hop off?
No, this has been awesome. Thank you. And I'll definitely catch up on the rest of it on the replay as well. Thank you for setting this up, and thanks everybody for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks for hopping on here. All right, cool. I'm excited about the Farcaster stuff, and this is something I've got a pretty early Farcaster ID, but I get social media sprawl, and it's hard for me. I'm more focused on building all the things, but very excited with me wearing far too many hats, building the ecosystem that we are to provide some other opportunities for people to get in and contribute. So moving down the list, did we want to do anything about the unlocked protocol potential implementation? I think that we've got quite a bit already that we can unpack from that. Did anybody want to chime in some thoughts?
Sure, let's go.
I love it. You're ready to hook it up already. I can tell, Stella. So LFG. So I already asked this earlier, but I'm going to actually just pop back in because I don't think that we were actually because the question that I had here was about the DAO ecosystem composability. And I did have a tab open here as far as creating my first hat. And before I go to the linking trees later, one of the things that I just wanted to re-echo is that, and can you touch on the mutable versus the immutable flag? Is that a danger zone if you don't want to? And where would it be a best case to potentially make something immutable?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, recommend people stop or start with mutable, of course. Once you go immutable, you can't go back. So that's the danger zone there, is when you make a hat immutable. It's immutable. It really is. And where we could see groups eventually making their hats immutable is where you want to have like total certainty that that the hat itself isn't going to change, that you want to specify only exactly one address at a time can wear this hat and hold this authority. Or we know for certainty that this hat, its eligibility criteria is set in stone. It is, you have to have X number of tokens or stake X number of tokens. Nobody can change that later. And so it's really as particular roles get codified, and it's really important to have that level of certainty, then you can make that hat immutable. And if you needed to in the future, you could always create a new hat to replace that role. But it just creates a lot more certainty. Whereas if a hat is mutable, then any admin, which is any hat that is directly linked higher in the hat's tree, can change its details. So it can change the description, the image, the number of wearers, add and emit new hats to new addresses, and change the eligibility criteria for the hat. And so that's where you have to be a little bit thoughtful about the structure of the tree because of those admin relationships.
All right, well, I'm definitely not going to do anything immutable with what we're building right now because there's a lot of uncertainty. So we'll just stay with the mutable aspect. So this is one of the things that I'm pretty excited as far as in the DAO ecosystem that we're building here for DUNADAO is to implement the trees functionality where you can kind of get like sub DAOs is a very common thing, especially where you've got potentially sub DAOs with the working group and potentially having like a OpEx budget for that particular working group or organizational branch. So anyway, getting back to the agenda here. So talked about the DAO ecosystem composability. So this is where the rubber meets the road as far as setting up hats for DUNADAO.eth. So let me open up the window over here where I've got the, and this is actually, I'll bring this over real quick because this is where I set up the certification for today's working group, where I'm going to be doing the airdrop here after this for all of the participants that are on the working group today. So again, that's a way that I like having fun and doing things on chain. But going over here to Hatsprotocol, and I got as far, I think, last time on connecting a wallet with DUNADAO.eth. So would you say that that's probably a best practice, like when you have just a organization to just start with like the .eth hot wallet for that organization?
Yeah, I think that's a fine starting point. We often see, groups like there's usually an individual DAO operator or catalyst who is setting it up in the first place, and they create the tree. They which means then they're wearing the top hat, which is like the super admin of the tree, which is what you'll do when you hit create new tree. And then we often recommend then having and we can go through this as you do it, but having a hat directly underneath that, which we call an autonomous admin or an admin hat. That ultimately is future-proofs the tree to be able to do kind of automated minting and revoking in the future. You can mint that particular hat to different contracts in the future that automate granting and revocation of hats. Just future-proofs the tree. But in the short term, as the tree is getting built, particular individuals, one or more, can wear that hat and continue to have admin authority over the rest of the tree, and so continue to make changes and deploy those changes directly without having to go through, a 2 or 3 multisig or whatever process that the DAO uses. Then later, as the tree gets created, you can renounce those admin hats, so you no longer have those powers, and you could transfer the top hat from an EOA to the DAO's contract. So then it truly is decentralized at that point, and any those super admin powers are then in the hands of the DAO itself as opposed to an individual.
Nice. And I thought that it would be worthwhile here just to show what chains are available, and we're building DUNADAO on Base, but these are the current available chains. So it looks like good portion. Go ahead, Stella.
Sorry, it's always the lady with the questions. So if I saw you have an integration with Fileverse and with Charmverse, so depending, I guess it depends which chain this is on. So in case of Fileverse, it's on Gnosis. So would you then recommend that we mint, like that we do this also then on Gnosis? Is that relevant even?
Well, and let's say you had your hats on Optimism. In the case of Charmverse, you could then go into Charmverse and associate a Charmverse role with a hat on any chain. So in that case, it doesn't matter what chain your hats are on, because Charmverse is going to be able to read the tokens on any chain. Fileverse, I'm not sure if they only operate on Gnosis. I'm not sure. Scott, do you know the answer to that? Fileverse is still finalizing their hats integration that's coming out in like a month
July.
or two.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason, I have something. And I was trying to find the hands, and I don't see it for some reason. Sorry. So I was going to ask you, can you use the Hatsprotocol as a token gating, or it doesn't work that way? You do unlock and then you do Hatsprotocol. You know how you do the token gating from unlock to other platforms? Can you do a token gating from here and use it somewhere else?
Yeah, Scott, do you want to take that?
Yeah, the hats are 1155 tokens, so anything that's 1155 compatible is able to be used for any token gating solutions that you need.
Oh, 1155, that's how you call it?
Yeah, the ERC 1155. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you very much.
Cheers.
So for the details, if I don't select something, it'll just give like the standard hat, correct?
Yep, it'll just be the default image, and you can always update that later. The top hat is the only one that is an admin of itself. So if you control the top hat, you can change the top hat image later.
Okay. And as far as the top hat name, what would you, does this need to be anything like fancy or?
It's probably DUNADAO.
DUNADAO. All right. We'll just go with DUNADAO.org. There we go. And then description. And go ahead, Dr. Lau.
Has there been any interesting conflicts with the commercial firms? Roles can sometimes intersect with local labor laws, so you could have like the same role, but need to be treated quite differently because of different countries. We see the EU with fairly strict rules on volunteer work.
I haven't seen that specific case yet, but have seen the case where there are kind of similar roles, but there are, you know, small but meaningful differences between them. And in that case, we see groups create a group, which you can create by creating a hat that has 0 wearers, a supply of 0. In our UI, then it treats it as a group. Then you could create a bunch of individual hats underneath that. So you could have like a group that is for that specific role, but then individual hats underneath that one for each country of relevance.
And as far as the description here, like, this is just more, where does this actually show up?
That'll show up on the hat itself, and you can always update that later. So it's fine to keep it blank for now if you want.
So, and it's not a required field then?
No.
All right, cool. All right, well, here we go. We are minting my very first hat on our working group today. So, and I love the transaction fees here on Base. Now, do people use like a logo for the project for the top hat sometimes?
Yeah, I think that's a easy thing to fall back on. All right, so here now that the hat's created, now you can hit edit tree in the upper left.
Okay, edit tree. And what's the 42, just out of curiosity?
So this is now the 42nd tree, hats tree that's been created on Base. And so you can see kind of the unique base ID and then tree ID up there. And now each hat you create underneath is going to have its own unique ID. So the first hat you create is going to be 42.1. If you create another hat underneath that, that's 42.1.1. Those are actually encoded in the hat's token IDs themselves. And so, you're able to look at the ID of any particular hat and know exactly what tree it's a part of and where it's located in the tree. And that can be really useful for token gating and other things.
Okay, and this may be like where the opportunity for composability with Unlock Protocol, because I don't know if I really want to create another NFT that represents the same functionality. So am I understanding that right? Like if I went through right now without the integration, because Unlock is done using ERC 721. So that would basically, if I did that, create two NFTs that would represent the same purpose, if I'm understanding.
So the unlock would handle the subscription piece of it and like the payment piece of it. And then with somebody minting the unlock NFT, we can create a hook that basically automatically mints them the hat. And the hat is what you would use then to bundle all the other things, the Farcaster rights, the multi-sig signing, the Charmverse, Telegram, Discord, everything else. And so the hat is like the role itself that gives you access, and the unlock is handling the subscription part of it. But you have to be paying an active, actively paying the unlock subscription in order to continue wearing the hat. And the moment you stop the subscription and you lose the unlock NFT, that's the eligibility criteria for the hat. And so you'd lose your hat and all the powers that come with it.
Okay, cool. So, and you said click on edit tree, and then this creates 42.1.
Yep. You can hit that button.
Which one?
The create hat button.
Oh, down here?
Yeah. So zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
There you go. And then click on that new hat that's been created.
This one down here? Like the plus, or just anywhere in this box?
Click where it says new hat.
Okay.
Yep. So this is the first child hat that you've created. You can name this one, name it Autonomous Admin. That's just going to future proof the tree. And then we can do the rest of the tree from there.
And you said name it what? Autonomous
Admin. Yeah.
And
go down to wearers. Right there, hit the box to open up wearers, change it to max wearers 5 for now. You can always change that later, and then hit save at the top. Cool. And then you can zoom out again, and underneath the autonomous admin now is where you can create the rest of your hats tree. And so this can be, you know, starting with different branches or working groups or whatnot, and then cascading down from there to individual roles. Or as Stella was talking about before, you know, you could just go straight to individual roles. Like we want a hat for Farcaster casting authority. You can create all of them now. In edit mode, what this allows you to do is to basically sketch out your whole structure and have the flexibility to change any of the details, to change any of the hats, to add a hat here and then actually delete it. And then once you're ready, you can go back to the draft changes list button there in the upper right. And you could be able to hit deploy in the upper right, and that's gonna be able to deploy all those new hats and all those changes all at once in a single transaction. Later, you can also do is hit the export button. That's going to export a JSON file, which then anybody else can use which anybody would then open up the same URL that you're in currently, import that JSON using the import button, and they would see your draft tree in all its glory, and they would be able to make changes themselves and then export it, and you'd be able to go back and see the changes that they added. Last thing I'll point out here is at the bottom, transaction call data. If you needed to deploy changes through a multi-sig, because the only hat that you had authority to create the changes for was one that was worn by the multi-sig or a DAO contract, you could get the transaction call data there and just add that to a DAO proposal. And that's how you could execute the changes to a tree via a DAO proposal.
Awesome. Well, I'm quite okay with getting this amount of progress done. Does anybody want to ask some questions here now?
Yeah, I do. So the deploy button, you can always like do changes or like a user made as many times you want, or only once.
Sorry, so can you say that again?
Like if you make a change in the hat and the child hat or anything like that, can you redeploy that again?
Yep. You could deploy a new transaction that then changes the tree again. So
Okay.
if you hit deploy now, you could see it, and it'll create the autonomous admin hat. And then later, we could go back into edit mode. We could change the details of the autonomous admin hat, the name and everything else. We could create new hats underneath it and whatnot, and then deploy those if you wanted to.
Okay, so I noticed that he paid like 0.1 cent or something like that, super cheap because it's paid, right? So every time it is a change, I would pay, right?
Yeah, a little bit, whatever they
A little bit. It's nothing, so it's good.
Yeah, we've tried to be really careful with gas considerations.
Fabulous. All right. Well, what other questions do we have? I don't know if I actually have any other agenda, and this is something that I'll do offline as far as going through and setting up the participation ladder within our DAO ecosystem here. Looking forward to getting in and playing around with this. Go ahead, Dr. Lau.
Question for David. And let's start with some rather unusual use case that we might talk about it offline. But what happened was I was organising a hackathon a few weeks ago, but it's got some very specific traits in that we are trying to train up what we call dual class roles, so both a lawyer and a coder. So during the hackathon, if you're a lawyer, I want to suppress your type of skills, abilities, and only for you to use coding type skills. So it's not, we're using the Hatsprotocol for membership, but the use case is that for a hackathon, they made some fairly unusual constraints on the roles and the permissions that I'll probably talk with guys offline about, just pointing out that we've got some unusual use cases.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to put my Telegram handle in the chat here, so you can feel free to reach out. Yonks, I'll just maybe show you one more thing in the app, just kind of the span of things you can do here. So go back to edit tree and let's create a new hat under autonomous admin. So hit the create hat button underneath there. Yep, perfect. Click on that new hat that you've just created. Yep. So let's say you wanted to give this hat certain, Charmverse powers and, the ability to join a Telegram group and we'll just say signing authority or whatever, bundling a bunch of permissions in a Explorer hat. If you scroll down, I just want to show you all the things you can do here. So if you hit wares, this is where you can set the max supply of this hat for anywhere from 1 to 4 point something billion. That's the number of possible wearers of that hat in any given time. And below that, you can add the addresses that you want to mint that hat to. And you can batch mint them all in one transaction, and you can upload a CSV instead if you want. If you open up responsibilities, these are just text fields, but it's a really helpful way to actually document the real responsibilities of the role that people will be held accountable to. Under powers, those are ways to detail the specific powers that the hat gives you access to. And so this is like where you would indicate, this hat gives you the ability to access a role in Charmverse. You could add that link to access that role in Charmverse in the authority link. And so people then, all those permissions are bundled in the hat, and people via the hat's UI can go access via Charmverse, get the Telegram access, get etc. Claim multi-sig signing authority from the UI in this powers group here. Under revocation and eligibility, you can set this to a specific address in the EOA or multi-sig or DAO contract. This is the address that has the ability to revoke a hat from an individual address or state that a particular address is eligible to wear a hat. That can be done manually by setting the address and the accountability address, or it can be done automatically. So if you check the automatically button there under hat revocation and then say create new module. So these are the current modules that are in the Hats module registry, which is curated by Hatsprotocol right now in a decentralized way. And anybody can build a new module and add it to and submit it for curation in the Hats module registry, and it will show up in this UI and any other app that uses the Hats module registry. So these are the things that can automatically grant and revoke a hat. For example, agreement eligibility, I mentioned you have to sign an agreement to wear the hat, allow lists, and you can state who then, which other hat or which address controls the allow list. Eligibility around tokens or NFTs, level 55, ERC20 or 721s, you have to have a minimum threshold. And so this is how we would set up the unlock protocol eligibility, was with the 721 eligibility there. You have to have this unlock NFT in order to have this hat, and we can create a hook that automatically grants or revokes the hat associated with the unlock NFT. And yep, nice. So that would be there, and then you need a minimum balance of 1. And then you could, under permissionless claiming, you can say, yes, this hat can be claimed by anybody who is eligible, and you'll set the admin to the autonomous admin. That's why we have it there, because there needs to be a hat that has the ability to grant and revoke the hat from somebody else. So that's the autonomous admin that now has that power. And it'll be worn by a new contract that if you deploy and return, it's going to deploy this contract, which is the module, the hats module, which states the eligibility for that particular hat, which can do the automatic granting and revocation.
And what's the claim for account here?
That enables you or anybody else to mint a hat to somebody who is eligible. So you can claim a hat for somebody else rather than requiring them to claim for themselves.
Yeah, no, I believe that is no. All right, so I guess we can go ahead and deploy and return, because I think that this is the
Scott, anything you would add before we submit this transaction here?
Nope, seems good.
Can't remember if I called it, if I changed the name from New Hat or not, but
And we
I can
can
change that
we
later.
can do that later. Yep. So you can hit save now at the top. So that ERC 721 eligibility module has been deployed. Go scroll up here. You can change the name. Oh, it looks like we didn't hit save before, so you have to change the hat name again to Explorer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you change the wearers, the number of wearers also, because it looks like that we didn't hit save there. Scott says this is fixed on Bucket, so this will be live soon. Not having to click save. And so you can click save now and then hit the back button. And then you can deploy. And that will, the module's already been deployed, and now it's deploying the changes to the hat itself.
Looks like it didn't get the Explorer, but I'll get that
It'll
fixed
come. It's
offline
just
here.
indexing in the subgraph. I think it just takes a few seconds.
And is this where the description would show up here?
If you click on the hat, the description shows up when you click on the hat. So if you refresh, I bet it'll have shown up. It's just still indexing. Yeah, it takes a little while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's what I want to show. And then the last thing is underneath, we looked at revocation and eligibility. There's also another section for toggle or activation and deactivation. Same kind of thing. You can add modules to that. But instead of saying an individual address can or cannot wear this hat, that's saying the hat itself is basically turned on or off for all wearers. So, for example, if we have the authority to deactivate our Hat's community member hat, I wouldn't have to revoke the hat from all 200 and something addresses. I could just toggle the hat off for a period of time. I could toggle it back on later, and all the permissions associated with that hat would toggle off, would be instantly deactivated for the period of time that the hat is off.
Nice. All right. Well, we only have a few more minutes left, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. Is there any additional questions that we have before we call this for a wrap here today?
Yeah, I do have a question. When people sometimes redeploy smart contracts, they talk about proxies and all these, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Is that something that happens in the back end here when you redeploy the smart contract? No? Or you're not actually redeploying a smart contract, you're just making it more change.
When we deployed the module, those are proxied contracts. When you're deploying new trees and new hats, those are all living within the same hats contract, so there's not deploys there.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Cheers.
All right. I don't know if Dr. Lau still had a hand up from before, but if you've got a question, Dr. Lau, go ahead and chime in. Otherwise, thank you, David and Scott and everybody for participating. This has been absolutely fabulous. And I see Dr. Lau open up your mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's one third use case that again is fairly unusual. That in the legal circumstances, we have what we would call a first responder protocol, and that if something happens, like a security break or something like that, usually whoever's first on the scene is promoted to be, take responsibility. So even if you're just a mere new member, so long as you're the first to become aware of an incident, you sort of automatically privileges, and these get escalated as time goes on. So again, this is a fairly unusual use case, which comes down to security break-in and the legal consequences. So Dave, I'll probably talk about it with you offline on this.
Sounds good.
All righty. Well, thank you again, David and Scott, and thank you to the entire Hats Protocol team for making a very fabulous product to make organizing all of the chaos that exists within online communities, hopefully more manageable in a systematic way with this organizational graph protocol that you all are creating. And looking forward to facilitating the conversations with the Unlock protocol to hopefully get some better tie-ins there, because I'm not a dev, and I like the composability of all this cool stuff that all the talented devs bring to the ecosystem at large. So happy Friday, everybody. Have a safe and fun weekend.
Thanks, everyone. See you.